And we are live. What's up,
Woo!
Detroit? What's
What
good?
up, vigilante?
How are you, my friend? Everything is good in
I'm doing
America?
well. Everything is well, man. Yeah, everything is well physically with us. Fortunately, no one in our family has been affected by the COVID-19.
Mm.
But I will say, as a Black person in America, we are definitely making our voices heard through the protests, not only in my city, Houston, Texas, but also in various cities throughout the country: LA, New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, where George Floyd was killed,
Mm.
and many other cities throughout the world. Before we get off into the conversation, I just want to say thank you for giving us this platform to be able to share
My pleasure.
information with you all. And I appreciate that because, obviously what's going on over here doesn't necessarily have to be reflected in those other countries. But the
Mm.
fact that the people of France are standing with us in solidarity, it means a great deal. It means a whole lot. When I was telling some of my friends about this interview coming up, they were very, very pleased. They were surprised, but they were pleased at the fact that the people of France are standing in solidarity with Black people in America. So thank you.
Yeah, no, for me, it's kind of like we say before. We are, this together, and I, I found that it was beautiful yesterday. I'm sure you were aware about the all the hashtag. The black image that was all over the world. Even big companies that don't give a shit for that kind of
Yeah.
idea. This time they were supporting. Even to people that were disagreeing. I will never buy your products again. Well, fuck you! Don't buy it. I think that's important when I think that's really important that you can feel that it's something big when actually those companies or little companies and regular people all over the world that get united. And for me, the only way
Yes.
to affect change. And no, I think of course it's not easy. It's a it's a very hard period, especially for you guys. But I think at the end it
Yeah.
will be positive. It's like every change. There are people that are in favor of change and other people that are not.
Right. And the people, and honestly, man, you don't need everybody to make positive change. You need enough. You just need enough people
Yes.
to make positive change, because what's going to happen is those individuals who are on the wrong side of history, they'll fade away. They'll get out of the way. They'll be moved out of the way. And
Mm,
those that are on the positive, on the right side of history, those will be the ones that will continue to push society forward.
mm. And for you, this kind of time, this special time, it helps you to discover some of your friends, or I don't know, the true side. Because
Yes.
in my case, it happened with COVID, and now it's happening with this. It's kind of a polarizing issue, you know. But
Yes.
it's crazy
Hmm.
because you think you believe you know someone until you don't, until you saw that he start
Right.
to post some
Yeah.
bullshit, racist stuff, and then you say, okay, you're not my friend anymore.
Correct. Exactly. And I think a lot of it simply has to do with the fact that you've not had those conversations with
Mm,
them. Most of the
yeah.
time, you're in a quote unquote normal situation, a non-COVID situation where you're going to work, you're going, different places and doing different things. You don't really have the time to have those meaningful conversations. But I believe that now, since we're in this mode, we're in this COVID-19 mode. Everybody's at home.
Mm,
Everybody has time to research. Everybody has time to figure out what they believe, what they don't believe, and really put their true colors out there.
mm.
So I think that in a way, COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise in conjunction with what's going on with the social unrest, not only in this country, but also in countries all over the world.
Yeah, yeah. For me, of course, we are talking. We are focused this time in America, in racism in America, but it's happening all over the world. You know, it's
Yes.
for me.
Because
It's very intrinsic in Occidental culture that white people have uh, always have been, on the top of everything. So every time that kind of idea is challenged, uh, people react.
yes,
Mm,
yes. But it's interesting because it's you know the first obstacle is getting people to admit that there is such a thing as a system called racism, white supremacy.
mm,
It's for a lot of people, they tend to deny that that is an idea, and not only that it is an idea, but that it is the ruling system in place, and that
mm.
system has been in place since forever. Since,
Sure.
I mean, longer than I've been alive and longer than you've been alive.
Mm,
And I believe that in times like this, we must ask ourselves, do we want to rid ourselves of this system called racism, white supremacy, and replace it with a system of justice? And I feel
mm,
like part of the rioting or the rebelling, as I tend to call it, that's going on is an expression of the frustration that people who look like me have endured over the past hundreds of years that we've experienced
yeah.
it, not only in this country of America, but also in various other places. Racism, white supremacy is a global system. It's not just
Mm,
something that is in America. It's not just something that's in Europe. It's a international, global system. Wherever you go, there is a dynamic where white supremacy is on top and
mm.
everything else is on the bottom.
Sure. No, it happened with me
And so, yeah.
when I moved from Chile to live here in France.
Hmm.
Chile is in South America. Um, I
Yeah.
every day
Did you
I
live in Santiago?
yeah, I was used to live in Santiago.
Were you in Santiago?
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, I was there. I was in January. There was crazy because it's kind of the same. It's not exactly the same. It's a different problem, but anyway, when I moved here in France,
Yeah.
people, especially in this region, they are really cool. So I never feel too much discriminated, but you can feel sometimes with jokes. You can feel sometimes how the people relate to you because of your accent,
Hmm.
and you understand better when discrimination, because it's hard to white people grasp the concept because they have never experienced it, you know. So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, so that was my kind of a little experience. Yeah. No, but in Chile it's kind of
Yeah,
a
and I
different
mean, you know,
different.
I was
Sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that in you know, and it's different, but it's the same though, because in America, you know, you'll have individuals who will make jokes that are racial jokes, but then when you call them out on it, when you check them on it, it's like, oh, well, it was just a joke, man. I didn't mean anything by it. And that's usually how racism, white supremacy disguises itself, right? It's,
Sure.
oh, it's a joke. It's, you know, I didn't really mean it. Case in point, Jim Crow. You know, the term Jim Crow was it was a dance. It was a dance that was invented by Black people during the time of slavery, and eventually it was co-opted by racist white supremacists who viewed it as a insult to Black people. And like I said, it started as a joke. They made a song, and it was called the Jim Crow dance.
Sure.
And then you had Jim Crow laws. And those Jim Crow laws were explicitly created to discriminate Black people, to discriminate against Black people, you know? So that's why, you know, when you get around people and they, you know, they try to joke, they're really testing the waters to see what you'll accept, what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to tolerate. And, you know, once they've crossed certain boundaries, they'll continue to cross boundaries until it's outright, you know, until it's an outright racial attack against you.
Yeah. Yeah, the funny thing that is a kind of something that I listen sometimes. It's like, especially in America, people defend this kind of like, no, but they're just words, you know, like you know, it's like so bizarre because they completely ignore the context of those words, of the meaning
Yes.
of the effect, you know. Is language is you can broke people's soul with some words, so. But I think
Indeed,
it's
indeed.
a so cheap excuse, especially from the alt-right.
And I think that you're right. You know, the power of the power of words is very important. There's a gentleman by the name of Neely Fuller who wrote a book called the United Independent Compensatory Code Concept System, where it's a counter-racist workbook. And in the book, he gives an entire glossary of terms used to counter racism. You know, so when you use certain words, you know, like for example, instead of expressing that you have a solution to fight against racism, white supremacy, a solution tends to end a problem. As of right now, the current system of racism, white supremacy does not have a ending. So you can't call it a true solution. You can only call it a suggestion. So when I talk to my friends about solving the problem of racism, white supremacy, I can only present suggestions on how to move and how to operate, because we haven't come up with the solution yet. Because if the solution existed, we wouldn't have the problem of racism, white supremacy. So that's just one thing. But the book is really good. It's by a gentleman by the name of Neely Fuller, who basically wrote the book over, I think, like a 20-year period. He started in the late 60s writing the book, and he released the first edition of it in like 84, 85. And he has since released a new edition, I think around 2011, 2010, 2011, something like that. But yeah, he's a very and the way that he writes, it's not It's not academic at all. So it's not dense. A person could easily pick it up and read it and learn and be able to apply the things in it. Let me see if I can find a link to the book real quick. I'll put it in the chat.
Sure. Well, in the meantime, I can ask you a question. Do you think you are kind of surprised because of what is happening now, or you were kind of expecting something like this?
You know what? To be honest, I'm not ever surprised by the actions of racism, white supremacy. I am, however, surprised by the reaction of Black people and those who have chosen to align themselves with us as far as the protesting. I feel like right now, people, like, again, I think COVID-19 has helped us to be more focused and be more potent in our expression of our anger and our righteous indignation. Now, with that being said, I feel like that now that we have the world's attention, it's time for us to come up with a list of things, a list of demands, a list of how we want to be treated ongoing, moving forward.
Sure.
Because once you have the world's attention, that is when you make your presentation. I do feel like there are certain individuals who may be desiring to dissipate the energy, which is why when you saw the all Black squares on yesterday, I don't know if you noticed, there were some people that were saying, hey, don't put hashtag BLM or Black Lives Matter, because what tends to happen with the algorithms on social media, if you post enough of those Black squares, it'll wipe out a lot of the other important information that's been posted by those organizations.
Sure.
And so, when I posted it, I just said, I said what I said on my post, and I just kept it pushing. But I feel like I am definitely surprised, but I'm glad. I'm glad that the actions have stirred up the people and have stirred up other people to align themselves with us. Here's the link to the book. Boom.
Great.
And there it is.
Produce justice. We'll put it on the comments.
Yes. So his basically Neely Fuller's thesis is that we must every day use the gifts, talents, and abilities that we have to dismantle the system of racism, white supremacy, and replace it with a system of justice that is making sure no one is being mistreated and making sure that the people who need the most help receive the most constructive help. And I feel that right now, in this day and age, in this current era that we're experiencing, the people who need the most constructive help are people who look like me and people who have experienced hundreds of years of abuse. You see it in, you've seen it in Mike Brown, you've seen it in Trayvon Martin, but you've also seen it in Emmett Till back in the 50s. You've also seen it with, the Panthers in the 70s and Martin Luther King in the 1960s and the Freedom Riders and, and all these people, we're not all, when people have a tendency to say that, well, it's not really happening like that. We can't all be telling a lie. We can't all be pretending that this is this thing that's affecting us or that's not affecting us when it really is in a major way.
But what do you say, for example?
And I mean, like,
what do you say, for example, because it's something I heard a lot, to the people that say the evolution, of the rights in America, starting with slavery. No, after, okay, you're free, but no, you're not allowed to vote. Then you have the right to vote. Then okay, but do you think that there's a progression, talking about civil liberties for Black people, or is kind of
Um, I think it's I think the way the system of racism, white supremacy works is that when you've been given one civil liberty, another wall is put in the way of it. So, for example, when enslaved Black people in 1865 were freed, they said, okay, you're free, but there was no, there were promises that were made by the federal government in the United States, 40 acres and a mule. You've heard that term, probably, and basically
Sure.
it was saying that every Black family was, after slavery, was promised 40 acres of land and a mule to work the land. But then that was retracted by that was retracted, and that's something that we as Black people have used, to remind the United States, like, hey, man, like, you made certain tangible promises that have yet to be compensated, and that's just one example. If we continue on going into voters' rights, it's like, well, hey, yeah, you have the right to vote, but you got to pay poll tax. You have to take a test that was racially biased, that is supposed to give you eligibility to vote. And then when that's taken away, you had individuals who stand at polling places, intimidating Black people from voting. So you had a lot of the, it's like one thing is one negative is removed, and then another wall is put in its place.
Yeah.
It's
One
like,
step forward, one step back.
Exactly. And so now, we have, initially there was segregation, right? Separate but equal, but that was never fully realized, because the equality piece wasn't there. The separate piece was there. You had Black schools. You had only Blacks could go there. My father went to segregated schools all through elementary, middle, and high school. All of his grade was segregated, and then he ended up, graduating and going to college, and he went to what we call HBCUs, or historically Black colleges and universities. But that was his choice. He wanted to go to those schools, but it wasn't his choice to go to a Black only school. It was basically the law during that time. That's and slight tangent. That's something that's told to people, oh, slavery was so long ago, you should forget about it. And,
Sure.
your people, my family didn't enslave people. I didn't personally enslave people. But the thing about it is even though you personally didn't enslave anyone, you as an individual benefit from the free labor economy that was built on the backs of Black individuals.
Sure.
So that's that's really the answer that I have for individuals who say things like that, or but I think, again, in this current era, in this 21st century, this year 2020, I think that people moving forward will be very will treat these subjects with kid gloves and not be so quick to answer in a way that's derogatory or negatory against people who are Black.
Sure. And no, but I don't know. I was just asking the question because I heard that a lot, and for me, that's the perfect answer. You know, it's kind of systematic. It's not something like you know, you will change one thing and everything will be perfect. You need some systematic change, uh, and I don't know if you can talk about it, but it will be I think it would be cool for people, maybe if you can share a personal story when you feel kind of discriminated, or I don't know, because never ever
Um,
white people have experienced that.
so I don't, it's interesting, man. I was on Facebook the other day, and a fellow artist friend of mine who lives in LA, Leland, shout out to Leland, he posted a status and he said, to his Facebook friends, when was the first time you were called the N-word? And while I personally
Mm,
have never been uh, called the N-word by a white person, I
mm,
would be foolish to say that I've never been discriminated against, right?
mm.
So many people tend to think that racism is overt, and it's about being called the N-word
No, no,
and
no.
being, lynched.
Mm.
And it's not though. It's a lot of it has to do with microaggressions. A
Sure.
lot of it has to do with sub under the surface
Mm,
racism that exists. So I will say this. I was probably still either in high school or like the first year of college, and I was hanging with some friends downtown in Houston. We were coming up the street, coming down the sidewalk, and there was a white woman who had a purse, and it was me and two other gentlemen who were Hispanic, and the woman actually clutched her purse,
of
and
course.
it was interesting because we looked at we looked at each other, me and my friends, and it was like, not that we would ever rob anybody or do anything like
Mm.
that, but it was like, man, that's the kind of stuff that would make you want to rob somebody. The fact that you do that and you pass, like, what? We were thinking about you, lady. We were having a full on conversation. But yeah, that do make a person want to go rob somebody, you do something like that.
Yeah.
But it's stuff like that. I was very fortunate in my life I didn't go to a predominantly white school until like college. Like I got to
Okay.
college and I knew I was in the minority. I think like our population was 10% black.
Really?
And I'm not talking about, yeah, University of St. Thomas. And I'm not talking about like black as in American, like African American. I mean, like that's inclusive all black people, because we had black people from Colombia, we had black people from certain African countries, from the Sudan and from West Africa. We had black people who were from France and from Switzerland. We had so they all were collectively called black, and that was only 10% of the population of the university. So we knew very quickly that in order for us to I guess you would call it, to be unified, we had to come together. We had no choice. We couldn't say, oh well, you're African American and you're from the Sudan. We're not the same. We had to unite under our physical appearance. And fortunately, it worked for us in the time that we were there. The 4.5 years I spent there, it worked for us. We had a Black Student Union, and we would have events, cultural events. We'd have we'd have those things to bring awareness to Black culture, to African culture, and so on and so forth. But I feel like where we were fortunate to have that, there are many other institutions of higher learning in the United States that don't have that. And so that's
Yeah,
where
of
you
course.
hear about, you hear about on the news where you have like I think it's University of Missouri a few years ago, Mizzou, they call it Mizzou here, where the football team went on strike, and they were saying that we're not going to play until y'all, fire certain individuals, specifically the president of the university, who made certain racial comments. He thought he was making them in private, but someone actually brought those comments to the public. And so they were able to get him up out of there. You know what I'm saying? And that's like
Yeah,
that's like a huge D1 school
yeah.
that people go to and people, donate to and support. And,
Mm.
they go to the football games and the basketball games and things. And it's like, you feel comfortable with us playing games, but the moment we stand up and express ourselves on a political or social political stance, you get nervous because we're asking for something that we not only deserve, but it's our natural God-given right to have, and that is to be in a state of equity.
Have a respect for me. That's the word. It's
Yeah, that's all. Dignity, treating as a
yeah,
fellow human being.
yeah,
White
and
supremacy doesn't view anything outside of white supremacy. White
mm,
supremacists don't view anyone outside of the white supremacist uh, uh, silo as human.
sure,
That's why slavery was able to last as long as it was able to last, because when you don't view that individual as a human being, you can do
mm,
anything to them. They're
of
not
course,
human. You can
yeah,
rape them, you can beat them, you can put them under, horrible living conditions,
mm,
because in the end, they're not human.
yeah. They're not the same as you. Yeah, that's
Correct.
yeah. And for me, what you were telling about the director of that university, it's kind of crazy because if you think about it, in the 40s, the 50s, even the 60s, people could be openly racist, you know. And
Yes.
even then, and then technology advanced, and oops, internet. So now now people, they can't get away with that shit anymore, you know.
Correct. Because here's the thing about racism, white supremacy, it's an ever evolving, ever changing system, right? So the tools that they use to subjugate people back in those times, in the 40s, the 50s, etc., are no longer effective. So they had to change up the game. They had to say, okay, well, we can't overtly call that person the N-word, but we can discriminate against them in other ways.
Mm,
We can make sure that they don't have the rights to live in certain communities. We
mm,
can weaponize the police against them. We
sure.
can weaponize, other things. We can weaponize certain things against them. But when you say this is racist, we can deny it and say, no, that's not racist. We gave everybody a chance. We allowed everybody to have an opportunity to apply for this housing loan. But studies are showing that more people who are white are getting these housing loans than people who are Black or of any other
Sure.
race or nationality. So it's
Yeah.
just it's like I said, weaponizing the economy, weaponizing the police, it's purely weaponizing religion.
Mm,
That was something that was a very highly effective tool during the time of slavery. Black people were not allowed to read. you know. And so if you're not allowed to read and educate yourself and empower yourself with knowledge, you will really have no choice but to continue to be subjugated. But thank God
Sure.
for people like Harriet Tubman, people like Sojourner Truth, people like Nat Turner, who were able to read. Well, Harriet Tubman was never able to read, but she was able to use the tool of being called Black Moses and understood the significance of the symbolism of Moses as being a liberator of her people. Nat Turner, he was fortunate in that he was taught to read, and though he was instructed to preach and teach about, slaves obeying their masters in all things, etc., he would read other passages in the Bible, and he saw how Moses freed the slaves, freed the Hebrew slaves, how Joshua, fought the battle of Jericho, how, etc., etc., all these different instances and examples in the Bible, which was the religious book that he had access to, and he was able to use those messages to liberate, his people,
And what do you think that
and there's many other examples.
sorry.
No, no, no.
What do you think is the role of, for example, hip hop, rap music in creating that change? Do you think the current scene, scene of rap, trap, hip hop, it helps to create this kind of change, or is kind of backwards? It kind of make people.
I think that there's two different dynamics that are going. Great question. I think that there's two different dynamics that are going on in rap music. I think that at its very core, rap music comes from a place of rebellion, right? So when rap music was created in the late 70s, early 80s, it was about rebellion. It was about rebelling against the status quo. When music was taken out of schools, it was a way. It was like, okay, we don't have music programs, so we can't play instruments, right? So I'm gonna take these turntables and I'm gonna take this beat machine and I'm gonna use samples from musicians to create this new form, this new genre of music, which is all sample based. Instead of talking about partying in the club like disco was doing initially, I'm gonna talk about, I can't even get in the club. I'm so poor, I'm so broke, I'm so destitute that I'll never be accepted in that party society. You know what I'm saying? So that's one dynamic, right? That's the core, that's the essence, quote unquote, of hip hop. And then you have this other dynamic that's created by the labels, by the music labels, who say, well, we're going to continue to, keep your mind off of what's going on in the world. We're all just going to party. And we're going to talk about how many women I got, how much weed I smoke, how much drink I'm sipping. Look how many cars I have. And this whole materialistic, consumerist music, So I think that for many artists who are using the genre.
Do you think that is a result because most of rappers came from a very poor neighborhood? So from coming from nothing, it's kind of like the dream come true to show their gold and their money. I don't know.
I think it's two different ways to look at it. I think for some, it could be that way. Now, I've made it, right. I've reached this pinnacle in my life. I've reached this pinnacle, but I also feel that now that we have the internet, this powerful tool, the internet, we can see how a lot of that is just smoke and mirrors. Sure. That the access to wealth, that these people have comes at a price of basically, we talk about selling your soul, right? So the idea of, well, we'll let you sign a contract and you can get on and make all of this problematic music at the cost of you basically owing, this label millions of dollars for all of the backing that they've put behind you. So, you hear about the guy who makes the song and it blows up, it comes number one. But what you don't hear about is that, he's the last person to get paid. Everybody else, everybody in rap music gets paid first before the artist. The guy, the lawyers get paid, the accountants get paid, the marketing firm gets paid, the label gets paid, the producers of the music get paid. If the rapper has writers, they get paid. All those individuals are profiting solely off of the labor of the rapper, but the rapper is the last one to get paid. And so that becomes another form of slavery, a form of economic slavery. You know what I mean? But I also believe that there are individuals who have control of their art form, right? You have individuals like a Tech Nine out of St. Louis, who Kansas City, Missouri, who is totally independent. Independent, is not signed to any label. Strange Music is all his operation. He controls everything from the merchandising to, the people he chooses to have on his songs, the people that he has on his label. He controls all of that. Now, does a Tech Nine get as much publicity as, say, a Kanye or a Jay-Z? No. But the reality is, if you really ask the question, who is more independent, right? Who can really get up and lay down when they want to? It's Tech Nine. It's a guy like Tech Nine who has full creative freedom and full economic freedom over his own destiny. A person like Kanye, as much money as he has, and much success that he has, he still is under the auspices of labels. He's technically, he's still, owned. Good Music is a subsidiary of, of Def Jam, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like he's not even really free to do what he wants to do as much as he does. Kanye is, he's probably right now the aside from Jay-Z, he's probably the most well-known hip hop artist. He's most recognizable, but is he totally creatively and economically free? No, he is not.
Yeah. But my question was more like how it affect the culture, the messages that rappers give, like, I don't know, like Lil Wayne or, because you can hear that there are some kind of rappers that are very conscious, of their effects on their audience, and there are
like
others
a Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, for example.
So Kendrick Lamar, he's probably a great example of what an artist who is popular but is still making music that affects social change. His albums, from when he did Section 80 all the way up to Good Kid, Mad City, and then To Pimp a Butterfly, which was an absolute masterpiece. And then Damn, you know what I mean? Like, he's had projects where he's definitely spoken a great deal about not only his own internal issues, but also has given commentary on society as a whole. The song "We Gonna Be All Right," the song "All Right" by Kendrick, I truly believe that is the anthem for this generation's hip hop culture. But artists like you said, Lil Wayne, I mean, he may have been relevant 10 years ago, but it really, and he made a couple songs about what happened to the people from New Orleans during Katrina. But I think it was because of the fact that it was directly related to him. Like it affected him as well. But I've yet to hear an album, an entire body of work by Lil Wayne that has truly had a effect like a Kendrick Lamar or like a J. Cole or someone like that. Even some of the older artists like Tupac. As much as people try to say Tupac wasn't a lyricist, I truly believe Tupac spoke from his heart on a lot of things. He gave, he said what he meant on a lot of things, songs like Keep Your Head Up. And then even his earlier music, Trapped, he had a song where he talks specifically about police brutality, and how it affects him as being a young Black male in America. And those are the artists that I feel like will continue to persist throughout history. Sadly, you have many artists who have popularity, but they won't last. Like the quality of their music is not timeless.
And they don't use that popularity to affect change either.
Correct. Because that's really what it's about. It's about you.
No, you can go ahead.
But that's what it's about, right? It's about using the platform that you have, using the time that you've been given to create the most constructive change, to create the most justice that you can, because once that time is done, it's done. It's very hard to be an artist that has a certain trajectory to go back down and then come back up again. There's not been very many artists that have been able to do that, right?
Sure.
So you just have to operate within the time that you have and keep pushing. Which makes me think about a popular artist like Drake, right? Drake is probably, now that I think about it, Drake is probably more popular musically than a Kendrick Lamar or even a Kanye, because Drake makes more than anything pop music. They sound like rap songs, but Drake is more likely to get on top 40 radio than a Kendrick Lamar. You know what I mean? Kendrick Lamar will always be on urban radio, whereas Drake, he can get on top 40 radio and still make rap music.
Yeah.
But I don't think that Drake, in my mind, he's the embodiment of.
Sorry, continue.
No, I was just gonna say, in my mind, Drake is the embodiment of the individual who, when he's presented with an issue, he's not gonna speak on it. I think he does that for good reason. Because he does have so much popularity, he doesn't want to risk losing said popularity by speaking on unpopular,
you don't want to choose
or
a side.
uncomfortable. There you go.
And what do you think about Public Enemy?
Well, man, Public Enemy is one of my groups, my group Dirty and Nasty, one of our groups, like, inspirations. When Public Enemy came on the scene back in the 80s, they made such a splash that, it's gone on record that Professor Griff initially thought that they weren't going to last. You know what I mean? They thought that they were going to be either assassinated by the government or incarcerated because of the visceralness of their music. It was so polarizing to the point where they were like, yo, like, somebody gonna take us out. You know what I mean? Like, we're not making no happy-go-lucky music, When you hear case in point, Fight the Power, that song was the pivotal. That song was like the We Gonna Be All Right of the 80s, right? Like that was the song that gave that energized and electrified Black people during that time. Because you got to remember, man, like, the late 80s in those cities of LA and New York were very were bubbling with racial tension. It was the same year that Spike Lee's movie Do the Right Thing came out, that talked a great deal about racial discrimination and racial tension in the city of New York. And then you had the death of Radio Raheem in the movie, who was a symbol of hip hop. He having the big boom box with the song Fight the Power playing, blaring from it. And then he gets choked out by the police. And then Mookie, played by Spike Lee, throws the trash can through the window of Sal's Pizza to set off, you know what I'm saying, the events of that night. And then you had in LA with NWA, F the Police, which was another rallying cry to people to say, look, man, like, this is really what's going on in our community. Many people tend to put NWA in a box of gangster rap, but really they more so consider themselves reality music. And reality music was really just what was going on in the community with people that they knew or happening to them. And so the F the Police song was just expressing their anger and their indignation against the LAPD, which eventually bubbled up into the Rodney King incident in '92, which set off the LA riots. And then also Latasha Harding, who was killed by a Korean store owner for a bottle of orange juice. Shot in the back of the head and was killed instantly. And, these are things, again, like I said earlier, we're not making this up. Like, these are things that are happening on tape, and during that time, you didn't have social media. You didn't have a way to share that footage over and over and over again, which is why I believe that those two incidents caused as much of a explosion as it did. The LA riots lasted for days.
Yes,
and
I think that shows that
it really.
I think that shows that kind of racist. No, more likely the anger provoked by racism is right there. It's in the surface. You just need a little drop to a little match, and everything will be set on fire, because people. There is a point when people can't take it anymore. It's kind of the same that what's happening. It sorry for interrupt you. It's kind of exactly what happened last year in Chile, because in Chile our system is so unequal. It's the economical gap is so huge. There is so many poor people and so many rich people, and there's a huge social economical gap, and everything. All the people was always pissed off, for years, for decades, because we lived through a real dictatorship that put in place system to oppress people, to more to oppress people physically, was economically. Everything is private. Everything it's kind of crazy. It's a very unfair system. So people were really pissed, and they was just needed a little match to set everything on fire. And that match was like the government say, okay, now the subway will cost, I don't know, like 50 cents more. and there are people that are depending on taking the subway to go to work. So 50 cents every
Yeah.
day, 3 or 4 times a day. Um, People just couldn't take it anymore, and everything exploded.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, those kinds of things, and it's interesting, right? Like those kinds of things happen in other countries, you know, South America, in Europe, in Asia, but it seems like in America, you know, we have this idea that because we live in a democratic society, that it makes us exceptional and it makes us better
Yeah.
than, when the reality is that's not the case, because you still have a disparity between the rich and the poor in this country, you know, unlike any other, you know, country. And then when you put on top of that the system of racism, white supremacy, you have individuals who will never, ever in their wildest dreams be able to come up out of that system, because even if you do begin to make strides to become generational wealthy, because of the color of your skin, you are subjugated under that agenda.
Yeah, sure. And for me, what exposed, especially that kind of system, is well, your current president, Donald Trump. You can be more white than that. For me, that's is like the peak of everything is wrong with humanity. It's like
White
you know,
supremacy.
is
Yeah,
a racist, misogynistic, and he get away with it. You know, because you can see that there are a lot of people that are kind of shocked and can stand the guy, but there are other people that is their hero, and that shows
and not
that
only
is not a that is
not,
not an illusion. That is not an illusion. The systematic racism that exists in America. If it didn't exist, that guy will never could be elected.
exactly. But I think that because the system of racism, white supremacy exists, not only does he get elected, but he's also able to galvanize people who think like him, that are empowered by him, because he makes them
Sure.
feel better than everyone else. Um,
Sure.
George Wallace, who was a politician during the 1960s, stated that as long as we can make white people feel better or superior to black people, we don't have to give them a hospital. We don't have to give them paved roads. We don't have to give them functioning schools. As long as we can make them feel superior to black people, that's all we need to do. And I think that that's something that Donald Trump does very well. When he has his rallies, he makes them feel empowered. He is their voice. He doesn't give them a voice. He is their voice.
Yes.
He represents everything that they want to say, everything that they want to express, and he empowers them to feel that way.
Yeah, of course. And it's crazy. I think these days, with the picture he take with the Bible and everything, that guy was never religious, you know. But he's so well advised. I think he's really. I don't know if you saw the documentary, The Great Hack. It's in Netflix. I recommend everyone to watch it. Um, Now the technology that we have that can allow us to share information like right now and have meaningful conversation, it's
Mhm.
always kind of um, they can use it against us, and be manipulated and show you what you you want to be sure, you they show you what you want to see. And it was really interesting, during the campaign, how their speeches, the way he talk, and now the religious stuff is, you can see very clear that he's really very good advice, because I don't know if it's true or not, but I think the majority of people in America are kind of religious, or I don't know. It's kind of
I think I don't I don't think religious so much as I think that for a long time, America has portrayed itself as being culturally Christian.
yeah, that,
This
that, that's
idea
fair.
that, yeah, of being culturally Christian. But when you really lay down the real essence and the heart of Christianity alongside this culturally Christian um, view, they're not the same at all. Like when I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and I was saying, when you read about Jesus being in the temple, overturning the tables and whipping the money changers out, many people who view themselves as culturally Christian tend to not put Jesus in a mode of righteous indignation or being angry. Most people tend to think of Jesus as very meek and mild, but they forget that Jesus said, when the time comes, you'll need to sell your coat and buy a sword. We tend to kind of, not we, but Americans tend to gloss over those parts of scripture. The very fact that Jesus could not in no way, shape, or form have been a white person, that alarms people who are culturally Christian, because if you don't have a God or a deity that looks like you, right, then how can you uh, be empowered? You know what I'm saying? How can you um, have any kind of positive thought about yourself? That was the whole. That was the whole premise of subjugating black people in the first place. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I tell everybody, yo, I'm Christian, but don't get it twisted, man. My Jesus is black. Jesus looks like me.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what do you think is
but
the reason
but
he
many
took a
people,
picture with the Bible? Why? Why he did
I
that?
think the I think the reason, it's very simple. He's appealing to his audience. He's
Okay.
appealing to his audience. The people who have elected him in office view themselves as culturally Christian, right? These are the same people who are part of the Ku Klux Klan. These are the same people who are neo-Nazi. These are the same people who are individuals who say things like, if the King James version is good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me, without realizing that Jesus was a Jewish man living in first century Palestine, who, if you saw him on the street walking toward you, you would probably spit on him. These are the people who he's appealing to.
Sure.
These are the people who he's appealing to. And so as long as he does the right things, says the right things, and gives the dog whistles, and says things like, when the looting happens, the shooting starts. When he says those things, it empowers them to a level of it's scary, man.
Yeah.
It's scary to think that you have people that sit around that hang on his every word as they do.
Yeah. For me, that was the point that I was trying to make, because I don't really think that all their fan base is really that extreme. Of course, there are a lot of Nazis and members of the Ku Klux Klan, but the people that get elected was
Yeah.
like regular people, you know, and that's the scary part. It's
And that
like,
goes Yes, and that speaks to my point that I made earlier about racism, white supremacy, is
Mm.
that the illusion is all white supremacists are Ku Klux Klan
Yeah,
and
exactly.
neo-Nazi. It's really subtle. Yeah, it's subtle. It's under the surface. It's your everyday Joe. It's the teacher, it's the police officer, it's
Mm.
the businessman um, who views themselves as superior. That's where you get that white supremacy thing.
Mm.
Views themselves as superior to all others based solely on the color of their skin.
Yeah. And do you think Trump helped to create this kind of environment when he give because you can see the transition to Obama, from Obama to Trump. Do you think that this kind of affect white people, like, okay, now I feel a little more free to, I don't know, say the N word or to
Yeah,
some stuff that before I was kind of restrained?
yes. He has given them freedom. When you have a leader, when you have a narcissistic leader that gives you energy to feel the way you want to feel, to do what you want to do, to say what you want to say, um, like he does, I think that played into it a great deal. Now, does that mean that racism became a thing when he stepped into office? No, it's
No, no.
always it's always been here under the surface. It's always been here under the surface, but I think that for him, I think he took it to another level, and people who did not view um, people who viewed the world in the way he does were looking for the pendulum to swing the other way. So when Obama was in office, it was hope, it was change, it was he's a black man, he's black wife, black children, he's positive male role model, etc. And he was black. The pendulum was ready for a lot of people who felt and thought that way. They were ready for the pendulum to swing the other way, and it
Mm.
did. It did.
Yeah.
And people were not. People thought it was a joke. Again, racism, white supremacy. Like I said,
Yeah.
they one of their tools is to shield it in the joke. Oh man, nobody's gonna vote. Nobody's really gonna vote for the reality TV star. Nobody's really gonna vote for the guy who filed for bankruptcy on practically every business he's ever owned. Nobody's gonna really vote for that guy. But what they underestimated was that the people who watched those shows that he was on, who really felt like that he would be good and positive for the country, he spoke to them. He went to where they were.
Yeah.
He went and he
He do the work.
he
He
gave
did
them
the work.
confidence. He did. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
I don't know, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but when Obama got elected, of course, a lot of black people were happy. Well, maybe with something historical, for sure. But do you think that
Mhm.
something changed? Like, on the other side, like white people was like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable.
No, not all white people, kind of way, because you had a lot of the what they call the Tea Party
Sure.
political people, those individuals who, regardless of whatever Obama brought to the forefront, if he tried to bring some kind of law into effect, they would vote it down no matter what. Guys like Ted
Sure.
Cruz and um, you know other individuals who are in office. Um, you know, those individuals, man, like again, they could not stand the fact that he was a black man in
Yeah.
position of power over them. So whatever they could do to sabotage his ability to legislate, or his ability to not legislate, but rather his ability to lead, right? Whatever they could do to sabotage that, they were going to do, even if it was a detriment to the country. So it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Sure.
And I think that's, I mean, in plain terms, I think that's really what it was. I don't think it was all white people. I definitely had a lot of friends who were white who voted for Obama both times. But I think that the white supremacists, those that were in power, were definitely not ready for that. And as a detriment to this country, a lot of things that he was trying to mobilize did not go into effect.
Yeah, for me, the more crazy stuff was the birth certificate. You know, they were like repeating over and over and over.
Yeah,
like,
man.
Like, was like, what the fuck? It's like you because you couldn't find something else. You know, like he killed someone. No, try to create something better. You know, well, like so stupid.
Right. But I think that's what racism, white supremacy does, man. It's a distraction. It creates a distraction. To say, oh, this gentleman was not born in America, he doesn't deserve to run for office. We know it was absolutely preposterous because we eventually saw the birth certificate from Hawaii. So it's like, okay, now that that's been proven wrong, but because Donald Trump made such a big stink about it, it brought a lot of those other individuals out of the woodwork that, normally would not have been brought out the woodwork. And because he spoke directly to them as his constituents, they came out in mass. They came out and they voted for him. And the irony is, he didn't even win the popular vote. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but because of the way that the Electoral College works, he was able to secure the presidency.
I really tried to. I'm still trying to figure it out how your system works, because it's crazy. People elect one guy or one lady, and no, it doesn't count.
Yeah. And I think that, at the end of the day, I think that I think our society, unless we're comfortable with it, I think eventually society will hopefully move away from that, because that system is totally antiquated. It was a system that was created back in the 1700s that we, it's totally antiquated now. It's something that we can afford to leave behind.
Sure. So, David, D3. I know you're a busy guy.
Yes.
So, I really thank you for having this conversation, and I would like if you can invite people to check out your music, check out your Facebook, and I don't know where people can get more knowledge, because during these times when there is so much misinformation, it would be great if you can help us with that.
So you can find me on all the different social media platforms at D, the numeral 3, the concrete, just like it's spelled in my name at the bottom, D3, the concrete. Feel free to reach out, email d3theconcrete@gmail.com. If you want to listen to our music, the name of the group is Dirty and Nasty. Dirty Knows Nasty, like KNOWS.com. Our social media is all Dirty Nose Nasty, Dirty KNOWS Nasty. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us there, dirtynosenasty@gmail.com. You can even find videos. I have a few links that we put in the live chat that kind of speak to the kind of music that we make, which is heavily influenced by Public Enemy. Yeah, that's one of our songs right there, Down by Law, from our latest album, Knowledge is Queen. We put it out in 2017, and we have to put it out again because the distribution, the digital distribution company that we use, we had to take it down, and then we had to repost it through another one. And we had some issues with some samples, but we got it fixed. So now it's on Apple Music last time I checked. And we're supposed to be getting it put back on Spotify and all other social media. I mean, the digital streaming platforms. So for now, you can go to our website.
Sorry, can you explain real quick what is happening on the video and the intro?
In the video.
Yeah.
So Down by Law, the concept of the video comes from a movie called Falling Down. Actor by the name of Michael Douglas. He plays the lead character. Yeah, and he kind of like goes through all these different things in the movie. He's trying to get back to his kid, but he goes through all these like chaotic things. And so this is, how we were talking about earlier, the one thing that kind of trips you off, that makes you fall over the edge. This is what that video is about. So it's like you get fired from work, you don't really like your job, and they let you go, and you're at your breaking point. So that's why my storyline, he pulls out this gun, he's like ready to kind of go off on people. And then when you get to Nasty's part, he does sort of the same thing. Like, he's ready to mob on the people at his job. Inspiration from Falling Down and the movie Domino. A lot of the cinematography choices that we made. Shouts out to the homie that shot this video. We just told him, man, we wanted to look like this, and we wanted to have this kind of effect on the footage. And he pulled it off really well, man. Yeah. We shot this all, and we shot a lot of this in like 2 days. So like all this part in downtown Houston, we shot it one day, and then we shot this part a different day, the B-roll footage. And we took a lot of footage from like protests that were going on at that time, protests going on in Ukraine, during the uprising in Ukraine and other parts of the world at that time. So that's why we say, man, a lot of the music that we've been making, man, has been very ahead of its time. And I think now people are looking for music variety, and that's what this album is. It's really our expression of anger and righteous indignation of what's not only been going on, but what's still going on today. Yeah, man, the homie, he really put his all into shooting this video for us, man, and we're really grateful, man. So yeah, this is Nasty's storyline. So he's kind of at work, minding his business, and he gets laid off, just like he said in this verse. And we're part of that segment of society that we term the overeducated underclass. We've been told all our lives, you get up, you go to school, you get an education, you get a degree, get a job,
you do
and
everything
then you
right.
have this perfect life. But the reality is it never happens that way. Well, I'm not going to say it never happens that way, but it's a very, very slim part of the population that gets those things correct.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a huge
to work twice harder to have that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, man. So that's pretty much what it's all about, man. And we just, our group, we look at ourselves as people who we're not perfect, We don't have all the answers. We don't have the solutions because, again, if we had the solution, then racism, white supremacy would be done. But we have suggestions, and we tend to offer those suggestions over some dope hip hop beats. And real talk, I'm gonna say it right here, man. We would love to have a vigilante, dirty and nasty collaboration.
Let's
I
do
know
it.
you've sent some production to us, but we definitely are ready to work with you, man. And we want to do something really, really, really dope and be able to offer people solutions in our suggestions in our music over some dope, some real hard like metal type because we like metal music, like we like Rage Against the Machine. Like Rage
Yeah.
Against the Machine is one of our big influences too. Like, you know, if you listen to our album, we got a song Bomb Track where we sample
Mm,
Rage, and we have
yeah.
another song called ATP where we sample Ministry. So it's funny
Yeah.
because the guy that produced that beat for us, he's a huge Ministry fan. And to know that you have actually worked with that band before, it's kind of like it's predestinated for us to kind of work
Yeah.
together. So we're definitely looking forward to working with you, man.
No, my pleasure. It will be great. So I really thank you, David
Indeed, indeed.
Petrie. And well, I hope to see you next time and keep fighting the good fight. Uh, and well, stay safe. And well,
Yeah,
we
man.
talk to you later.
Take care, Ivan. Thank you so much. Vigilante, thank you. From the bunker, this is a dope platform, dope podcast. And to the people of France, thank you so much for holding it down for in solidarity with us over here in America.
No problem, man. I want to say something before we go. I want to say Wakanda
Yes.
forever.
I
Okay,
love
man.
that shirt, man.
Bye, man.
Take care. Peace.